enjoying the crisp fall weather.
I know, I love it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great.
I know this 2 weeks of fall we need to get out there and roll around in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so today we're talking about, junior year and what kids need to be doing as far as college planning, when they're a
Yeah.
junior and in the fall season. So I know a lot of parents stress about this, about what's the next step? How do I go about this? And, Bobby and I are always trying to simplify this process for you so that you don't feel like you need to get into the swirl and, be confused about what you need to do for college. So we're going to dive into just this fall season and what you need to do to be prepared.
Absolutely. I mean, I think junior year, at some point during junior year, students are going to go from not being interested at all in college or something like that, or not at least interested in what they need to do to get into college. And then suddenly, somewhere around, I don't know, in the fall or right after the fall, that's when they're gonna suddenly become interested, probably because other friends at school are going to start talking about SAT and PSAT and ACT and all these things and college choices, and so then suddenly you're going to all feel like you're way behind.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I can tell you as a mom of two that have been to college, I get
Mhm.
it. I always tell you this story about sitting at the ball field and the mom coming up to me and saying, "Hey, did you get Chris signed up for the, SAT test?" And I was like, "No." And then all of a sudden it was like this, I'm a bad mom. I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, this parenting thing, I'm failing. And my kid's never going to get into college and all those good things. So, and I'm going to tell you, my perspective on this, Bobby, is this college
Mhm.
planning thing is not that difficult, and we all make it more difficult than it is.
Absolutely. Everybody will scare you into thinking that there are so many things, and people will give you, just all this information that conflicts with each other. And that's why this timeline that, I mean, I think people can download it from your page, right?
Mhm.
This timeline is really helpful because first thing, it shows you that there's not that much, and it breaks it down into little steps and say, okay, junior year fall, there's not that much. That's just when you start, right? So you start thinking about all these things, right? And so if you start talking about these things, then maybe your kid's going to get a little interested earlier on, and be one of those that's actually ahead of the game, which is what you'd really rather, because it is horrible senior year if you're not prepared.
It is, and I'll tell you, even though we speak to this that it shouldn't be that difficult, it's still a lot of
Mhm.
work. There's still
Oh,
a
sure.
lot you have to get done. But if you know the steps, it just doesn't
Mhm.
feel nearly as overwhelming. And the college timeline that Bobby's talking about is, in it, we talk about that there are tactical things that you need to get done. And that's
Mhm.
what all parents worry about. It's what the kids worry about. It's what the school counselors talk about. It's all the check marks that you have to do because there are dates
Mhm.
associated with them. What we like to promote is if you enter this kind of as an exploration and you really
Mhm.
look at this as, let's figure out what the kid wants to do as far as career path, and do they want to go to college and what does that look like, and start to have those conversations early, this process stays simple, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And then we also include some smart things that you should probably do while you're doing your college planning. So just know it's in the timeline, and we're going to walk you through, this junior year for fall, and then you're going to see junior year for winter, junior year for summer. So all that's coming up. So just know you can take it in small pieces.
Mhm. Absolutely. And as you look at the timeline, like later on in the process, it becomes much more tactical. There are lots of steps you have to do. At the beginning in fall of junior year, it's just, things to look at and start exploring and learning about. It's more just the time to start researching a little bit, right?
Yeah, and we'll jump right into that. And just
Yeah.
for the viewers, just to give you a little bit of background on what Bobby does and what I do. Bobby is an SAT, ACT coach. I
Mhm.
think one of the best in the country, but I might be a little jaded because he helped my kiddos. Um, and I work with teens, helping them figure out their career path before they go to college, hopefully. But if not, if you've got a college student that has changed their major several times, I can help them. If you've got that kid that just graduated from college and is holding up that piece of paper and going, I don't know what to do with this now, those are the people that I help.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really, it works well together. You know, a lot of my tutoring students, I mean, it's one thing to get a good ACT or SAT score, but you need to know what, you know, something about your strengths and what you're going to do in college if you're going to succeed. Otherwise, you might go to the wrong college, end up having to spend 5 or 6 years getting out because you changed majors. So it really, these things all go together.
Yeah, they do. So let's jump in. Let's give
Absolutely.
them what they want, Bobby. And that is, how in the heck do I get through this?
Right.
Yeah. So of course, we look at this, and if we're really in looking at that exploration phase, I can't tell you enough how much simpler this college planning process goes if your child knows the end goal. So if they walk in having a career in mind, then the rest of it starts to fall into place because they have a clear-cut goal. They know which schools are going to support that career path. So that helps in the college selection. And by the way, they also know, what they need as far as an SAT, ACT score to get into the specific college, to get the scholarships they want and all that good stuff. So it all starts to fall into place.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think this is really important for parents today because at least when I was in school and when you were in school, it was easy to go off to college with no idea or plan about career at all. And then you just figure it out as you went. But you can't do that now with the cost of school and with lots of degrees like accounting and engineering and things like that taking 5 years to complete.
And Bobby, I put myself
You've got to plan.
Yeah, I put myself through college waiting tables. Kids can't do that today.
It's impossible to do now. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so you absolutely need to, you don't need to figure out exactly what job you're going to have, but you need to know what your strengths are and what sorts of careers would suit that and what sorts of majors would work there. And that's absolutely what I do is tell parents, start from the end goal, right? If you want to apply to college in the fall, okay, you need to know what kind of colleges you'd want, what kind of careers, then come backwards from that. Okay, you need an SAT and ACT score by the end of junior year if you can, so that you can go visit colleges and all that, right? This is the beginning step, which is students like some of mine have done should come and work with you and figure out what career would be best for them, or at least just start researching and talking about it as a family. If you just start talking about careers fall of junior year. Yeah.
Bobby, you hit the nail on the head. This is not a short-term decision, right?
Right.
And that's why we really put that into that exploration phase is let's start talking about things we know we don't want to do. And that's going to rule out a bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And, I always, when I'm talking to my parents, it's, guys, if these are all the career paths that your kid, all in this area that your kid could want to do, if we can get them into this pie shape, if I can angle that right, get them into the pie shape, well, at least then when they go to school, they're navigating within that little pie shape. So all of the experiences are building upon each other, right? And
absolutely.
Yeah. And then at the end, as they go through college, and by the way, do everything that college is supposed to do is to expose them to all these cool things within that pie shape. They're starting to narrow that. So by the time they get out of college, they have a much clearer idea on the job that they truly do want to get into.
Yeah. And I think this is also something that we're learning, one of the things about the current generation of students, or at least the generation that has recently come out of college, is that they care a whole lot more about being happy and enjoying their jobs and are more demanding of finding a job that they're going to enjoy and have some quality of life with. I think much more than we were. We grew up just being told, you get a job, you're probably not going to like it, and you're going to work there for 40 years, and like we didn't even think about enjoying our job. And yet, so this current generation is doing that. And I think all of humanity also, after what's happened over the past couple of years, suddenly many people are now leaving jobs they're unhappy with and going and finding jobs that are better because we all had a year to sit and just think and reevaluate what's important and key. And I think recognizing that I think it would be so easy as a parent today to just repeat all the things that you said that you thought were true 30 years ago. And it's not, it's different now. And so we need to understand the way people think now, and that if you're going to care that much about finding a job you like, you better do some thinking about what kind of job you'd like. So yeah, just
Yeah. And
start talking about careers.
a lot of times I hear out there, Bobby, oh, a 17-year-old cannot figure out a career. And I'm like, yeah, we've all got to start somewhere. We've all got to start somewhere. And by the way, what we've been doing in the past, to your point, hasn't been working. We still have people that, 30% of our college attendees don't go back after their freshman year. That's a $30,000 experiment you don't want to play around with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And like you said, we've got a bunch of people raising their hand going, I hate what I'm doing and I don't want to be here anymore. So yeah, it's worth the effort, and it's worth the conversations to explore this piece of it. And the next thing that we need to talk about is now we need to start researching colleges at this point too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
absolutely. Yeah. So like once you have an idea of what sorts of careers you might be interested in, what you'd like to learn about, then absolutely, that's when you go just to the standard college search thing. And I mean, it's very simple. There's so many websites, but it's overwhelming because there's so many colleges, right? And so you might just start with like an area of the country, or, like, oh, I'd be interested in going to school in the East where, all the forests and things like that, or I'd like to go to the West Coast, and start looking at these things, right? And just pick out a few colleges, even if they're not ones you're that much interested in. Just go to you see the link, princetonreview.com/college-search. That's a great place to start. They even have a book, the best however many colleges, best 789 colleges or whatever. If you just open it up to your random page and look, you'll find out all these things and find out about colleges you've never heard of, because otherwise you're probably just going to apply to the 2 or 3 colleges that everybody from your high school all goes to. And you should look outside of there, right? And that's when you start thinking about, should I go to a big place or a small place? Do I care about student teacher ratios? Do I care if there's wilderness nearby where I can hike or, canoe or whatever? I didn't think about any of those things.
Oh my gosh, no. I grew up in Iowa and you had 2 choices. And of course I picked the right one, which is the University of Iowa.
Absolutely.
Right. But you're bringing up a really interesting point. And I talk to a lot of parents and they're like, my kid's just not even interested in figuring out what college they want to go to. I have to give them ideas. What I love about the Princeton Review site is you type in preferences. It's a place to start, right? That you can either say, I'm a kid that doesn't want to go far from home. So, you can look at the region, or you can just go, I don't care. This is what I'm interested in. And you can go, look at stuff throughout the country, but you got to give them a place to start. I mean,
absolutely.
Know what was outside of our little bubble, and like,
right. And nobody naturally knows how to do this. You just have to start doing it. And that's why it's funny. And these are like things you can start in the exploration phases. Like, I think we've talked about this before. Pick one day a week where you're going to have a short conversation about this kind of stuff, so that you're going to do it every week, and so that you won't be badgering your kid every day on the drive to whatever, about it, right? But then just say, okay.
Yeah, we can't say this enough, Bobby. I think it's a point we need to bring up in every one of these videos. One time a week, you all agree on it. What's going to happen. And now, if your kiddo comes to you at a different point in the week, yay,
oh, sure.
all bets are off. You have the conversation, but yeah, keep it to the one time, because
absolutely
just hammered.
Absolutely. And so then you can have a little exercise. You're like, okay, this week, go find one college that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it, or something like that. Just,
I love it.
And that's how you're going to get, like, everyone I know that went to who went off the beaten path to different colleges. Like my friend who went to Bard College, like I had never heard of Bard College, and he's one of the most interesting people I know, and has had the happiest life, and I think is now a wine rep and travels the country representing, wines to restaurants, and has a wonderful life. It's just so wonderful, and just really interesting.
Well, and you made it fun. You know,
Mhm.
you make this college search fun and interesting, and yeah, you could have this great conversation around dinner, which we all need anyway, set down the phones and have a good conversation. So yeah, let's make this more interesting and fun and, open yourself up to their different ideas. I think that's another really interesting point is if they bring up a college in Hawaii,
Right.
about it. Act like it could be top on their list. Whether inside you're like trembling,
Yep.
like I sure hope they don't go to Hawaii. They're going to talk themselves out of any ideas that don't make sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so these things all go together, right? Career path, which you can figure out with, taking the Clifton Strengths Assessment, which is what you help students with, exploring what careers would match with that, and then exploring colleges that fit those careers. Because if you do have the career idea, then it's very easy to look for colleges that are highly ranked in that career area or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And then the kind of last piece for the parents mostly, but this can be part of the conversation as well, is the financial stuff, right? You've got to start figuring out how you're going to pay for college, right? I think not very many of us are in a situation where we can just write a check for this enormous, this enormous cost. And also, you need to start researching that as parents, because there are some financial things that you might need to do junior year to make the FAFSA, FAFSA easier to fill out during senior year, right? If you have money in a 529, or you have money in different places, or you just inherited some money from a relative or something like that, you need to make sure you do the right thing with that, because it can enormously affect financial aid.
Yeah, and Bobby and I have a really, really cool contact that we just met recently. That she actually has this report. I just did it for my son, who's already gone through college, by the way. But I wanted to kind of verify that I liked the program, right? Maggie Kuklenga, hard name to say, but I will put it in the chat, and I'll give you a link. But what the report tells you is, if your child wants to go to, you get to pick out 3 schools. You put in what you make, you put in anything I think that you've got saved for college, what their grades are, what their SAT scores, ACT scores are. And it basically spits out magically,
Right.
which I love, how much you can expect to cost for that or pay for that college. And mine, I put in OSU where he went. I put in TCU because I wanted to put in a private college, and I put in Texas Tech just as an example of a state college in Texas. My family is in Texas, and I'll tell you, it was pretty dead on. It was actually a tad bit high, but keep in mind we're fast forwarding 4 years, right?
Yeah. All right.
So it could very well have been spot on for my kiddo.
So that's great to know. So it matched kind of what it did cost for you. That's great.
And
that's so valuable.
Well, it is, Bobby, because 2 things on this. I in my heart and and part of my analytical brain, I kind of knew what I was going to spend, but to see that number on paper,
yeah,
and then you're writing big checks, out every semester. It's really eye-opening, number 1. Number 2, if you're planning on paying for this, great. If the child is expected to pay for some of that, that may affect their choices, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They may choose not to have all the loans. So yeah, taking a look at your financial picture and having an open conversation with your kid is important. And I know sometimes for parents, this is also a tad bit uncomfortable, because we come up in that generation where you don't talk about money and what you have and what you make and all that good stuff. But you have to let them know.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, is, until you start learning about this federal application for for student financial aid, you don't realize that senior year, you're going to have to fill that thing out. Technically, the student has to fill that thing out, and it has your parent income and assets on it. So unless you're writing a check for the whole thing and you don't want any financial aid, you're going to be filling that thing out. You're going to be having to share that information. So you might as well start like filling that stuff out, start having that conversations, because you may be surprised a year later when you're going to have to talk about it anyway. So.
And there are people that can help you through that form, because
sure.
It's confusing. I don't care what anybody says, hands down, it's confusing. But Maggie, the resource that I'm going to put in the chat, she can help you with that as well. Absolutely,
because it is. I mean, it's very similar to tax forms. It is intimidating to fill out, for sure. So many questions and lots of stuff. And so start learning about it junior year. These are all just things to start exploring. And this is just fall of junior year, right? This is the stuff to begin the process, because by winter and spring, there's more that you need to be doing. And so you need to have this groundwork done, or else you're going to be trying to do it all at once at the end of junior year and in the summer. And there's too much. It'll be too stressful.
We didn't talk about the PSAT.
Right. So the PSAT, of course, is in October of junior year. And that's when, that's generally most students' first exposure to standardized tests, when they get the scores back from the PSAT in January or so, right? That's when generally suddenly they start realizing that college is coming and all that. The PSAT in itself is not important unless you're going to be in the top 1% of scores in your state, because that's all the PSAT does, is decide who is nominated as national merit semifinalists, who then get big scholarships. So you don't need to prepare for it unless there's a chance of being in the top 1% of your state. But be aware that it's going to come in October, and that's kind of when the conversation sort of begins, if it hasn't already begun, because you're like, oh, what is this thing? Oh, it's about college. Okay, right. And you can use your score from the PSAT to get an idea. Okay, like, do we need to increase scores? Should we take the PSAT, the SAT, or the ACT? Making those decisions. And I'm always happy to help people answer those questions. When you get your PSAT score back in December or January, that's a good time to contact me and start talking about, what you might need to do to work on standardized test scores.
Yes, and reach out to Bobby. He's so good. You're so good about this, Bobby, is helping families. Just even if you've got a minor question, just to reach out and ask him. He's so giving of his time, just to help you through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you can contact both of us on our website. So you can fill out a contact me form on my website. It's just bobbyhoodonlinetutoring.com. Fill out a contact me form. I'm happy to talk to anybody about these things, right? You don't have to enroll for me to answer questions. Just always happy to talk to anyone. So.
Yeah, and I typically have a class starting, no matter when you're listening to this, called Pick the Right Major, which we do talk about career path. I got to tell you, about 98% of the time, but ultimately a major falls out of that once we decide kind of what a career path looks like for your kiddo. So go to my website and you can sign up for that.
Absolutely. My students who've done it have found it really valuable. So that's great.
Thanks, Bobby.
Absolutely.